Hello, I'm Andrew Pritchard. Thank you for watching today's Corn Belt Regional Forecast, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, as we look at the storylines for the Corn Belt for the next week or so, we've got a lull in the active and wet weather pattern that we've seen for the last couple of months. I'm not calling it a dry pattern because it's simply not a full shutdown of the active weather pattern. It's a brief pause in the pattern that's given us multi-day heavy rain events. We'll put that aside for maybe a week or so. But it's not going to be a full shutdown. There will still be opportunities for a couple nuisance systems to slide through, delivering some light rain showers, maybe a couple isolated thunderstorms as we head through the next week. So some folks certainly may luck out and remain dry for the next week, but I would imagine most of us going to be seeing at least the opportunity for a brief shower or two at some point here over the next week. We're looking at a cooler week ahead across the core of the Corn Belt. Not cold by any stretch. You know, it's getting into mid-May, but we're talking about days with highs in the 60s and 70s across a big chunk of the middle of the country here. And so definitely, as we do dry down a little bit, going to be shifting to a cooler weather pattern for the next week or so. And then trouble ahead. You know, it's a brief pause. It's not a full shutdown in the pattern. Like I said, the active weather pattern not coming to an end. We're just going to briefly shift away from a pattern that's conducive to the big multi-day heavy rain events. But as I look ahead towards the last week or two of May, it does look quite unsettled and maybe even a big ramp up in the severe weather system across the central, or severe weather season across the central part of the country. So we'll dive in here and take a look at the details and kind of sort all of this out. If we look at the national blended model, the total forecast precipitation through 7 p.m. on Tuesday. So this gets us through the next 5 days or so, and you do see it is remarkably dry across a big section of the Corn Belt. We've got a system sneaking through over the weekend that's going to bring some rain to parts of the Mid-South and the Ohio River Valley, and then we've also got a system that's going to bring, again, like I said, nuisance showers to parts of the upper Midwest. As we head through the back half of the weekend as well. But, overall, a much drier next 5 days. If we look at the week 1 precipitation anomalies, this is from the GFS ensemble model. Again, the yellow shading that you see across the core of the country here, the central United States, definitely drier than average. Not fully dry, but below average precipitation here for the next week. As we look at the week 2 precipitation anomalies, though, there is the trouble ahead. We shift back to the pattern that we've had for the last month or two, which just favors storm systems developing across the central U.S. And so the big question is how and when, or how far does this creep into the eastern Corn Belt, and when does that happen? It looks like as we get towards the end of next week, that's when we start to ramp up across the central U.S., and it does seem to follow that this will spread eastward through the Corn Belt. So just highlighting the pattern there, dry for the next week, but looking ahead to week 2, it looks like a full resume on the very active and stormy pattern. Temperatures, the next 5 days, temperature anomaly, obviously the coolest weather going to be confined to the central and eastern Corn Belt here, with near average temperatures off toward the north. Very cold off toward, or very cool, I should say. It's not going to be cold in Texas in May, but the coldest anomalies off towards the south in the southern plains for the next 5 days. If we look at days 6 through 10, so this has taken us from May 16th through May 20th, we see warmer weather does return to the central Corn Belt, kicking those cooler anomalies off to the east. But then when we look at days 11 through 15, so May 21st through the 25th, this is where I see trouble. We're developing a pattern like this with cooler temperatures off to the west, warmer off to the east. That suggests a pattern where the jet stream's doing something like this, where we've got a trough in the west, and we've got a ridge in the east, and this is just a prime setup for the development of low pressure across the central plains, lifting into the Midwest, and obviously that is a very stormy pattern for the middle part of the country as we head again into the last part of the month of May. Now, taking a look, we'll just bring it back to where we are now, take a more high-resolution look at where we're going over the next few days. As we look at temperatures at 9 o'clock on Friday morning, we've got a very obvious cold front draped across parts of the central and eastern Corn Belt here, extending from Ohio down into the Gulf Coast region. We're quite cool on the backside here. Temperatures in the 40s and the 50s. Across the central and northern plains, we've got some freeze watches and freeze advisories in parts of Nebraska and Kansas. That also is the case in parts of Michigan, still dealing with flooding issues across parts of the central and southern plains extending into the Ohio River Valley after quite a bit of rain over the last 72 hours. The satellite picture on Friday morning, we've got the cold front, you remember, draped in this general area, and so we're seeing some low cloudiness on the backside of that here in parts of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, getting into Kentucky and Tennessee, where it's a bit of a gloomy Friday, but maybe getting some sunshine moving into this area as we get into Friday afternoon, but certainly across a big portion of the Corn Belt, a very beautiful Friday morning. If not a little bit cool, that sunshine does make a little bit of a difference, at least for the moods sometimes. It's not great for drying down the fields, which is what we're really concerned about, but at least a sunny start to the weekend across the central and the northern Corn Belt. Looking at the radar picture here, we do have some rain going on underneath some of those clouds across parts of Indiana and Ohio. Some light showers exiting the area. The heaviest rain today obviously confined off to the Gulf Coast, where we've got a large area of thunderstorms, and then the remnants of the storm system that brought the heavy rain to the central United States over the last several days, kicking itself off into the northeast region here as we get into the weekend. What you see off to the north, though, as we look towards the southern prairies of Canada, that is the little clipper system that's going to slide into the Corn Belt here, parts of the Corn Belt at least, over the back half of the weekend, bringing some light precipitation. We've also got this storm system over the southwest, and that's going to be swinging through the Ohio River, bringing some light rain chances as we get through the day Saturday into Saturday night. We'll take a look at that here in a moment. Here's the last 72 hours of precipitation, though, highlighting an area that was really badly hit over the last 3 days or so. Parts of Kansas getting into Oklahoma with heavy rain, thunderstorms, severe weather, just producing really heavy rainfall amounts in excess of 6 inches in some of these areas. But widespread again, the story over the last couple of months has just been rain for most people here over the Corn Belt. Keeping us from getting much progress made in the fields as we look towards planting in 2019. A look at the high-resolution NAM model for the next 60 hours, so getting us into the day on Sunday. Again, we'll watch this storm system coming out of the south, tracking into the Ohio River Valley, also watching this clipper system spin away into the northern and the central Corn Belt as we get into the middle part of the weekend. Let's go ahead, we'll click through over time with this, timing it out. I'll take the drawings off here for you. As we start the day on Friday, pretty quiet, pretty dry across much of the Corn Belt, tracking into the afternoon on Friday now. Getting into Friday night, still rather dry across much of the Corn Belt. So as we get into the day on Saturday, here we are at 7 o'clock on Saturday morning, 7 Central. We're watching this low over the northern plains. This is beginning to drop into the northern Corn Belt. We're watching this really disorganized but very annoying storm system organizing over the south now. We get into midday on Saturday, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and now getting into Saturday evening. Seeing these rain showers moving across parts of central southern Illinois, Kentucky and Tennessee and Indiana. Also seeing these rounds of light rain showers, maybe an isolated thunderstorm dropping through parts of the Dakotas into Minnesota, Iowa, and Nebraska. Now again, this is, if we look off towards the north, this is not, an all-day rain. This is, brief opportunities for rain showers moving through Saturday afternoon and Saturday evening across the northern plains. As we take this into Saturday night, and then eventually early on Sunday morning, we're seeing the heavier rain that moved through the Ohio River Valley. This is now moving out of the region, so no more of that as we get into the day on Sunday, but still watching this little system that's tracking through the northern plains. Let me go ahead and play this out one more time. Here we go. Play this out one more time just to get you to the very end here on Sunday, watching this system tracking through. Again, maybe bringing some light rain showers, but falling apart as it gets into the Midwest, running out of moisture here, getting into the mid-Mississippi Valley, so likely running out of steam by the time it gets into the eastern Corn Belt on Sunday. But there you go. Even as we get into Saturday and Sunday, some folks in the Corn Belt seeing the chance for at least some light rain, some light annoying rain Saturday and Saturday night. Now looking at accumulated precipitation, this is from the high-resolution NAM model. Let me go ahead and just stop this at the end of the loop. Let me go ahead and go back, play this one more time. I've lost the ability to pause it. But that just shows the scattered nature of the rain showers here getting across the northern plains into the mid-Mississippi Valley. The more widespread nature of the storm system tracking off to the south, bringing some rain Saturday and Saturday evening to parts of the Ohio River Valley. Now taking a look, kind of digesting the jet stream over the next 10 days, and we'll do it in pieces. This is going to be the next 5 days or so, taking a look at where the pattern ends up. We're watching this big trough drop out of Canada and sweeping into the eastern United States, while we develop a ridge over the west coast. Now it'll look like this. Eric did this on his Thursday morning ag forecast video. If you caught that, did a little bit of meteorology 101 here, talking about troughs and ridges. Now when we outline a trough, you can draw that in there. As we look ahead in front of that trough, this is where we expect it to be active and stormy. On the back side of that, we've got sinking motion in the profile of the atmosphere, and so we end up drier on this side. So this is a drier, and it's also a cooler pattern across the Corn Belt. As we can draw in the flow here, we've got flow coming out of Canada from the north here, so it's cooler and it's drier across the Corn Belt with a look like this. This is Monday afternoon. This ridge on the western United States, that's going to keep the west a little bit warmer, but again, a cooler, dry pattern in the Corn Belt. But where does it go after this? As we look at the 5 days or so that follows that, the ridge the trough over the eastern United States, that moves off over the Atlantic, and now we've got a situation where, let me go ahead and pause this, and we can draw our ridge back in there, or our trough. Here we go. The trough axis over the Central Plains. We get that U shape. Remember, it's active and it's stormy in front of that trough. And where is that? Right back over the Corn Belt. And that's why I think that we've got trouble looming ahead. It's going to be a lull in the very active pattern, a drier week ahead, not completely dry, but it's going to be crucial that we make the most out of this, because it does look like the last half of May becomes very active, very wet and unsettled, with the opportunity for severe weather across the central United States as well. So again, while it's not going to be dry for everyone, the folks who do get a dry week out of this, it's just going to be crucial to see how much work we can get done before this pattern jumps back to a very active phase across the central United States, including much of the Corn Belt. So let's look at this in one other way, the National Blended Model, the 10-day precipitation forecast. And I'm going to play this loop out. It's going to cover the next 10 days of total accumulated precipitation. You're going to watch it be very dry across this region for the first part of that loop. But when this loop ends, I want you to watch how things really ramp up across the central part of the country. So let's play it. Here you go, very dry with those nuisance showers across parts of the Corn Belt. But look at that. As we get to next weekend, this ends 7 a.m. on Sunday. Central part of the country really starting to get active again. Maybe draw it a little bit more like this, but how quickly does this spread into the eastern Corn Belt? It may be by next Sunday or Monday that we're dealing with rain and thunderstorms as early as Friday or Saturday of next week, to be honest with you, across much of the Corn Belt. So a drier week ahead. I'm a broken record at this point, but I just want to drive this point home that it's drier, not completely dry for the next week, but this pattern does not last forever. This lull does not last forever. It's going to be crucial to see how much work we can get done over the next week. We check in with corn planting progress, and it's just, especially in this region here, this high-producing region from Ohio, including Illinois, getting into Missouri, a big trouble spot. And then we can draw another big developing trouble spot off to the north. In this region here, obviously not ideal. We're still, 10 to 20% below average, but it's been drier there for the first part of the planting. It's been wet now over the last week, so this is a bit shut down. But when we look at who's going to be the driest over the next week, I'm looking at you here in Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana, and Ohio, just hoping we can put a dent in some of these numbers where, check it out. Illinois, 56% below or behind the 5-year rolling average here, really getting away from us here. So, again, just going to be crucial over the next week. If we do, luck out and remain mostly dry in some of these areas, that we're able to kind of push the issue and see what we can get done before the pattern ramps back up towards next weekend. What does the temperature forecast look like? I mentioned it's going to be a cooler week ahead. We'll finish here just looking at high temperatures over the next week or so. Your Friday high temperatures, especially in the central eastern Corn Belt. Look at that, where the cold front has passed through. High temperatures in the 50s and 60s, even some 40s in parts of Michigan. So we look at Saturday high temperatures, still rather cool across the central and eastern Corn Belt. High temperatures only in the 50s from Missouri into parts of Ohio. Sunday temperatures, Monday, starting to warm up now. Tuesday, high temperatures. This is where we start to see that ridge over the western U.S. Begin to migrate into the central Corn Belt. So warming up as we head into the early to mid part of next week before we start tracking, ramping back up towards an active pattern. Here's your Wednesday high temperatures in the 70s across much of the Corn Belt. And then this is looking at next Sunday. As always, Eric Snodgrass will have an in-depth look at the evolution of the next 1 to 2 weeks in our Monday Morning Ag Forecast video. And I'll have your next Corn Belt regional update for you midday on Tuesday. Have a great weekend.